Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In this video, we are going to solve another psychology's past paper. This is paper 2 from February-March 2021, and the paper's component is 2-2, and it is for 1 hour 30 minutes. So moving on to the first question, it says outline what is meant by a questionnaire. So simply it is for 2 marks, so you are going to get 1 mark for per correct point made. So you don't have to mention any examples, you just need to tell what is meant by a questionnaire. So it is a type of self-report where participants are asked questions in written form. So you need to mention that they are asked questions in written form. Written form is a key word over here because this is what differentiates a questionnaire from an interview. So you need to mention that the questions are asked in written form. Now moving on to its part B, it says explain one advantage of using a questionnaire rather than an interview in research. So you need to compare interviews with questionnaires. You need to identify an advantage and then you need to give its comparison with interview for the second mark. So you can write, let's say that questionnaire is more ethical and it requires less social desirability from the participant side. Now you need to compare it as an interview is face-to-face whereas a questionnaire is not. So you identified one of the advantage that is more ethical, or you can write any one of them, that it is more ethical or it requires less social desirability from the participant side. Why is it so? Because an interview is face to face whereas a questionnaire is not. It is in the written form. Now question 2 says outline what is meant by an aim. Include an example from one core study from the cognitive approach in your answer. So you need to make sure that your example is from the cognitive approach. So if we are about to describe or outline what is meant by an aim, so we can write that it tells the purpose of the study or of the investigation. Or you can also write that it tells us what the study intends to find out or what the study shows us. Now for example, you can write from Baron Cohen that Baron Cohen all intended to find out whether AQ was related to theory of mind or not. So this is one of the examples you are giving from the cognitive approach. You can also give examples from Andrade and Laniol, that Laniol's study had the purpose of investigating whether false memories could be implanted or not. And from Andrade, you can write that Andrade wanted to or intended to know whether doodling helps memory or not. So these are the examples you can give from either of the cognitive approach studies. Now in question number 3, it says the study by Milgram Obedience used voluntary sampling. Let's focus on voluntary sampling. Now explain what is meant by voluntary sampling using this study as an example. So you're going to get 1 mark for telling what is meant by the voluntary sampling, and the second mark is going to be for linking voluntary sampling with the study by Milgram. So it is a self-selecting sample where a group of participants choose to join this study. So the main word over here, the keyword over here is choose, that they themselves choose to be the part of this study. Now from the study by Milgram, you can write that Milgram recruited participants using adverts in a newspaper, and the participants selected themselves, they chose themselves when they saw the advert in the newspaper. Now part B says that suggests 2 ways that Milgram could have obtained a voluntary sampling with a wider variety of participants. So we need to suggest 2 ways, and you are going to get 1 mark for per suggestion made. So for example, it says suggest 2 ways in which he could have recruited a sample with a wider variety of participants. So for that, what happened in the study was he gave the newspapers the adverts in a particular area, which was New Haven. Now what he could have done is that he could have used adverts in different places. So this is you suggesting a way. Now we also need to explain it further to get the second mark. So the first mark is for he could have used adverts in different places. Now for example, you can write for example in different newspapers for different audience, or adverts in shops. You can also write that he could have specified a wider selection of features in his adverts for example different ethnic groups or different hobbies or different political beliefs. It can be anything. Now question number 4 says, in the study by Pilyav and al. Subway Samaritans, participant variable may have affected the results. Explain what is meant by participant variable using this study as an example. So again, it is for 2 marks. So you are going to get 1 mark for explaining what is meant by, for telling what it is meant by participant variable, and the second mark is going to be for giving the example from the study by Pilyav and al. So you can write that participant variable is the difference between individuals that could affect the dependent variable or the results or you can also write that individual differences are the ones that hide the effect of independent variable, and these can be counted as confounding variable. Now the example from the study can be that, for example, in the study by Palyavin, some of the participants may have been more helpful due to their personality and not because of the environment that was made. Now question number 5 says, Dement and Kleitman Sleep and Dreams used a sample of volunteers. Suggest why the sample may not have been representative of sleep and dreams in the general population. Again, it is for 2 marks, so you are going to get 2 marks for a detailed suggestion, which also tells a particular reason for why it was not, may not have been a representative of the whole population. So you can write that it was a small sample of just 9 participants, and only 5 were studied in detail, which means their dreaming might have been different from other people in the general population. Now question number 6 is, describe the ethical guidelines of numbers and replacement in relation to animals using any examples. So you have to use examples from the core studies, the core studies which have used animals, such as Yamamoto et al. Or Alex's study, the study by Pepperberg. So over here you first need to give a detailed definition which should be up to 3 to 4 marks of what it means by the ethical guideline of numbers and replacement, and the rest of the 2 marks will be for the examples. So for numbers, it means that you can write a proper answer. Let's say ethical guideline for numbers refers to the use of minimum animals as minimum number of animals reduces harm or distress to many animals and by replacement it means that animal experiments should be replaced with alternatives where possible, as this also reduces harm or distress to animals. Now, for example, you can write, for example, Pepperberg only used one parrot, which is good in terms of ethical guideline. And since we do not have any example from the core study which replaced the animals with any other alternative, so you can write any general example which can be also, for example, technology advances have made some studies previously done on animals possible on humans. So instead of animals, we can also use humans. For example, you can write, for example, some modern studies on brain functions are mostly done on humans nowadays, but previously they were mostly done on animals. Or you can also write that we can use technology advancements such as CCTV cameras, which can be placed out in the wild, or we can use any TV footage from TV shows instead of using actual animals. Now from section B, question number 7 says, Uma has a bird feeder in her garden. When she moved the bird feeder, some species of bird were faster to find it than others. Uma has moved the feeder a second time and is conducting an observational study to investigate which bird species are faster to learn the new location of the bird feeder. So observation is her research method, and the aim of her investigation or study is to investigate which bird species are faster to learn the new location of the bird feeder. Now what she is doing is she is using structured observation. We need to suggest how she could record her data. So basically need to tell her procedure of recording the data, that how she can use a structured observation to record her whole data for the study. So it is for 3 marks, so you are going to get 3 marks for per correct point made. You can write that she can decide, since it is a structured observation, so she can decide a limited range of behaviors to record. She can have a checklist with her to tally the listed behaviors. She can use behaviors such as searching in the old location, time to reach new location, or number of birds reaching the new location. Now part B says Uma cannot decide how many different bird species to observe. Suggest one reason why it would be better to record a small number of different species. So it has to be a practical reason. So it can be that so that it will be better for her to record a small number of species so that she can pick some birds that are easy to distinguish, which makes the recordings easier to analyze, and it will be more reliable. Now part 2 says suggest one reason why it would be better to record a large number of different species. So it would be better to record a large number of species because the sample is going to be more valid and representative. So it is going to make her study the results more generalized to a wider population of birds. Now question number 8 says Dr. Malt is testing whether a new drug to improve attention in mental health patients is better than an old drug. This is Dr. Malt's aim of the study. Now in her experiment, she is measuring the patient's attention to a stimulus. Explain what is meant by an independent variable using Dr. Malt's study as an example. So independent variable is a factor that is manipulated by the experimenter. You can also further explain that it is a difference in conditions that is compared amongst the two of them, and it is a variable that is expected to cause a change in the dependent variable. These are the generic definitions you can write for independent variable. Now from the study, for example, in Dr. Malt's study, the independent variables, the IVs are new and old drug. Now suggest how Dr. Malt could operationalize her dependent variable. Now her dependent variable was that if it is better for the mental health. Now how can she operationalize that dependent variable, that if it is better for the mental health or not? We need to suggest that it is for 1 mark, so we just simply need to suggest it in one sentence. So for example, let's say she can identify or record the score of how well the people concentrate on something, or you can write that she can record the speed to identify a target, or she can use a Likert type scale rating from 0 not attending to 5 with full attention, and participants can rate their attention on that particular scale. Now part 2 says explain one advantage of operationalizing the dependent variable in this way. So if we have used